is not necessarily TV. I'm going to, I think, skip some of these different things. I like this picture because it's pretty. And this is called spinning disc laser confocal microscope that really makes the picture. So here's a reminder of the cellulosic biofuels world that cellulose is fibers. That shouldn't surprise you. Right? It's literally spun. No luck with it?
No, it's working.
Oh, it's working. Ah. It was working. Okay. Yeah, that's my password. Yeah, I think something like that. I won't use that. Back to my computer. And so this represents the fibers that you're really trying to break down. So in addition to the logic we talked about last time, remember, you have cellulose as an individual polymer is actually not that hard to break down into glucose. It's when you take that and you make 16 of those, and then you take 2 of those, and then take 20 bundles of those 16, wind that up into a thread, then stick tar all over it, that you end it. So this is actually a confocal microscope kind of looking at the process of ultimately unraveling all of that mess is how you go about this process. And this includes some regulatory things in it as well. I wanted to go to this slide here next because it's kind of an interesting. This is actually a bioassay. Sometimes if you're trying to do research, you'd like to know, for instance, whether or not the organism is sticky. In this case, we want it to stick to the cellulose. It sticks. Okay. And interestingly enough, the assay is nothing more than kind of like, you remember going to the dentist or whatever, you're supposed to brush your teeth and they gave you a little thing and you chewed on it and they could see that you weren't doing a good job brushing your teeth? Okay. That's literally what this assay is kind of like. And the important thing is here is that when you provide it with glucose as opposed to other media that does not have glucose in it, it grows really fast. But then it doesn't stick to anything. And if it doesn't stick to the sticks, it's not going to tear down the actual sticks themselves. If instead you give it a polymer of cellulose and so forth, it tends to grow slow, but it gets really sticky. You start to think about this, and then you realize that this may actually explain the synergy that happens. If this organism is really good at chewing on the sticks, it's going to release the sugar. If it releases the sugar, well, there's no reason to be hanging out on the sticks anymore. I may as well release and go somewhere else in the world. Okay? If I make a friend in there that's eating my sugar, so let's say I'm chewing really hard on the sticks, and somebody else is eating my sugar, I'm going to continuously think I need to keep chewing on the sticks as fast as I can, because someone else is eating that. And so you end up trying to come up with a reason why, for instance, there would be a synergy biologically from this system. The reason, remember, the two together work better than either alone. It could be based on as simple as a regulatory mechanism of keeping the stick eater hungry. Yeah. Because it's sitting there doing that, and someone else is eating it's like you're making toast, and you got like 3 roommates that are eating it every time you take this new butter. You're like, so that is the basic concept behind it. I threw out this one here just because this is kind of an interesting one. As I mentioned last time, that remember yeast makes ethanol normally. I mean that's beer, right? But yeast is also pretty easy to genetically engineer as well. Even though it is a eukaryote, it's not a bacteria. It's not, remember, it's a eukaryote. You can do that. And so this was actually taking the yeast and genetically engineering the hydrocarbon made by the algae into the yeast. And then you could actually go directly from sticks the whole way to hydrocarbons based on this kind of a symbiosis. Okay. And that's sort of where the realm of, this is the biofilm dispersal that I was mentioning there. I'll go to the next one here. So this is where I wanted to have a context for metabolism. Yeah, my beef with learning biochemistry is there's this tendency to like want you to memorize stuff, okay, and never really much of the context. And so it kind of sits there for the half-life of the day and then goes away. Really, remember, it's all about making a molecule with a bunch of electrons in it so we can burn it later biologically and so forth. This is what I just described. Acetyl-CoA, we're all kind of sort of familiar, you know, remember it kind of was like started up there from glucose and made its way down to pyruvate. You're one step away from acetyl-CoA. And there's some various pathways for making this molecule, which it turns out is pretty much the same as making cholesterol. Okay, so it's basically two ways to die fat. Okay, you can either eat a whole lot and get fat that way and die, or you can eat a lot and then it goes in cholesterol and gets in your arteries and kills you that way. So those are two completely different pathways. Okay. So when we talk about the other ones that are here, like now remember, acetyl-CoA, that's not too surprising, it's pretty close to being going straight to ethanol. That makes sense. Butanol, a little bit more, but not too much. Farnesene that was a big startup company that made it pretty far. They went to commercial scale, and they did it in Brazil. Why would you go to Brazil? Lots of sugar cane. Okay. In fact, that's why their economy is like, you know, they run E80 plus. I mean, they 100% ethanol. Because they got a lot of sugar. And they use all the leftover sticks for something else. When you take sugar cane and you squeeze all the sugar out of it and you want to make bioethanol like the Brazilian economy, what do they do with the leftover sticks? They could develop sticks to ethanol, right? No utility of that. Why? You need to distill the ethanol. Okay, so you use the rest of the sticks and you burn them for the distillation associated with recovery of ethanol. The other one here is fat. I just want to throw this one out here. So this is the fatty acid thing. Vaguely remembering biochemistry, acetyl-CoA is just like, it's just add 2, add 2, add 2, add 2. And that's why fatty acids are always multiples of 2. All of which is completely different than going off to cholesterol. If I had a choice, which of those two molecules would I buy for fuel? Back corner. Not the cholesterol. Why? This molecule was in the mid-50s was identified by the oil industry as the ideal molecule for gasoline. Okay, two characteristics. Why? First of all, you don't want oxygen around. Right? As soon as you burn things, you add oxygen to them. The more oxygen you see, the less it is. I mean, let's face it. What is sugar? C, 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 OH, 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 so forth, right? It's a crappy molecule. Sugar is terrible. I mean, it's got an oxygen on every freaking carbon. It's all but burned. Okay? Compared to fatty acids, which are, you know, it's been burned a little bit on the end. Okay? And this one here hasn't been burned at all. So energetically, this one is far superior. Okay? One step further is that it's one step away from cyclization. It's really easy to take that thing and kind of do that. As soon as you make aromatic rings, it's really good for combustion and so forth. So that's why that one is so okay, so I wanted to kind of like look at this again. The other aspect of what I said in the afterthoughts is keep in mind is this is all got to be done cheap. Yeah. So why do we not want cholesterol anymore? So we do. Oh, we would love that truck. Well, me, I don't want it because it's going to kill me. Okay, because it accumulates in my arteries. Okay. Why does the algae make it? Float. They literally make it so that they can float, so they can be near the sun and carbon dioxide. I mean, that's a no-brainer. So here's another concept here that I just wanted to do is that this is a really expensive step. I mentioned that you can take the tar off of cellulosic materials. Okay, and you can do that with steam expansion, ammonia, stuff like that. But if it costs you a lot of money, then it's not a great process. So one of the questions is there a way in which one could actually get to the point of feeding these guys without spending money in separations and so on and so forth? And this is an interesting thing. So the next time you're walking in the woods, you can look for white rot fungi. And if you've ever seen white rot fungi, you'd be like, interesting. This is a fungus that was smart enough to say, why would I eat carbohydrate when I could eat lignin? Because lignin's got way more energy than carbohydrate does. It's just, and so they've actually, it actually preferentially eats away the lignin, the tar, and you end up with a tree that is white. That's why it's called white rot fungi. Think about it. Which would you rather eat? A high, like a Power, whatever the heck it is, or the Krispy Kreme donuts? Okay, it's a little bit off because we're designed to eat sugar, but we can't eat tar. Okay, tar would make more sense, and there is actually a historical precedent of years ago, and you can jot it down. It's called single-cell protein. It lasted for about, I heard this for about 5 years, maybe in the 70s and 80s. And the idea was, how are we going to feed the increasing populations of the world? Idea? We have so much oil around, why don't we just come up and feed oil to microorganisms and we'll create single-cell protein. So single-cell protein was the idea of growing organisms on oil and then using that as feed. As food, people, animals. There's so much damn oil in the world, what are we going to do with it? Well, we changed that system. But nonetheless, that looks like they just did what I wanted to do, right? They took the lignin off of that. They got the tar off the cellulose. And so white rot fungi are actually, I won't go into that. This is the work that Sun Kim does on cell frequency generation, lasers, all kinds of fun stuff like that. So here's sort of a paradigm thought here. And one of the inherent issues associated with fuel production, and that is they literally try to think in terms of sizing a plant for energy production based on how far you have to drag the sticks. That becomes the economic breakpoint. You can bale hay, and I am not kidding you. I just saw this at the meeting down in there, and they're like, the debate was square bales or round bales. What do you think wins? Yeah, square, round, square. You put round things together, you're holding, you're carrying around there. You can pack square bales better. Not if you have the right equipment for it. I mean, I know you can take the tractor, the little tools, bikes, and they're fun, trust me. Okay, but now you got to put them on a flatbed trailer, and your flatbed trailer you can stick more on there, and so that is clearly the switchgrass approach, is to make those. I'm talking big ass square bales. We're not talking the ones that the 90 pounders that I used to have a cousin that played football. Again, he could take 290 pounds in each one and throw them like that. 180 pounds in each hand. Not me. Okay. So why are we dragging the sticks around so much? It's because we have an inherent desire as engineers to make big plants. Does anyone know why? Who's taking design right now? What about scaling? More copies. What is the scaling factor for the cost of equipment and things that you build? 1.6 power. That's sort of the rule of thumb in the engineering world. is that it's scaling based to the 0.6 power. So think about that. So the 0.6 power means that the bigger I make, or the more money I spend to build my plant, okay? Because if I want my plant to be twice as big, it'll be 2 times that, right? To the 0.6 power. So I make my plants as big as possible. This is the nature of achieving economics of scale in the chemical industry. And so that is exactly the thing that opposes this type of technology, right? Because I want to make them as big as possible, which means I need to drag sticks from all of the around, right? We get away with economy of scale because it's easy to drag fluids around. It's easy to stick it in an oil tanker, bring it into a harbor, and stick it in a pipe and send it somewhere else for actual processing. So our entire paradigm for bio-based production is based on the exact opposite logic then. Okay? You can't think anymore. You have to think about distributed scale because you are going to be spending more energy dragging your sticks around than you're going to actually doing anything with them inherently. And so the question is, how can we do that? And I don't have the answer. I have my opinion, which I sort of threw out here, and that's like, hey, wait a minute, we're already doing this. Okay? These things are fermenters. Okay? They are glass lined. You actually take that, you do chop up your grass and so forth. What else do you stick in there in silo? Anyone know? Corn. A little bit of corn mixed in. Well, it's for storage because you got to feed your cows in the middle of the winter when grass isn't growing. That's what they're for. But you actually want to break down the lignin, get this thing up and rolling and fermenting, so you stick molasses in there as well. So you add molasses, you add a bunch of sticks, grass, corn, because you want to have some little more nutrition and so forth in there. And they're giant ass fermenters. And they're hot. So if any of you, I guess we can all miss on the fun of life, feeding cows in the middle of winter when it's minus whatever degrees, and when you turn on the thing on the top that runs around in there kind of scraping it off and throwing it off to the chute so you can feed the cows in the morning, okay, it's hot. It's really hot, okay, because there's an ongoing thermal, biological activity and so forth carrying that out. Plus, it turns out that you actually get better nutrition and energy to the cows than you did if you tried to feed that to them before you fermented. The fermentation starts to break down the material so they can get better access to that. And so cows are the ideal bioprocessing unit. In fact, since I'm diverging off into the ideal bioprocessing unit, it turns out that they are also the ideal biogas generator. Okay? And so cows, well, they fart up a storm, okay? And they produce quite a bit of methane in the process. The interesting aspect of it is that the residence time of the cow is way shorter than industrial bioprocessing, and no one has been able to figure that out. If you take a look at an anaerobic digester and you have the 20-day residence time, that is not how long it takes to poop out the end of the cow. Okay? Their residence time is less than a week. And so the fundamental question is, how do cows facilitate anaerobic digestion and nutrient uptake and all that other stuff and methane production so much better than any industrial process that we can do and put in the ground as far as actual equipment? And that is a fundamental question that we do not have an answer for at the moment. We are stuck with residence times of 20 days plus. What happens when you increase the residence time of the reactor? For all of you that I'm sorry that I made you late for that. Fundamentally, okay, when you increase the residence time of the reactor, what happens? True. Why? Let's say, we're going to flip it around here, that you still have the same demand side. I still want to make the same amount. Kind of, that's sort of almost there. It's got to be a bigger reactor, right? So if I'm going to have the same amount of product coming out there, and I have the residence times increases, and that little tau thing that's in your reaction, the only way to get that is to have a much larger reactor. That's why the reactors are 3 million gallons. Okay. In order to accommodate a residence time, because the same amount of crap comes out of the city of Philadelphia, okay, I don't be like, okay, everybody, it's fasting weekend, okay, or go home, somewhere else out of the city for the weekend. You need to have massive increases in residence time. And volume is really hard to design, particularly for bioreactors. Why? Sterile. Heat was the other one, huge issue there with heat and so forth. But also remember, if you're trying to do biological processing and you're trying to think about this thing, it's like you're going to try to steam sterilize it and so on and so forth. It's really tough to be thinking. And so it means you have to even start to completely think about, rethink the paradigm of how this has to be done non-sterilely. Which means you can't make sugar. And so you have to sort of think about this in a way of could I, it's called permissiveness. If I could take, for instance, my fungus, remember that eats lignin. What does it do with the biomass? A fungus has cell walls made out of chitin. Chitin has nitrogen in it. So it's a polymer like glucose, but it has nitrogen in it. And so as it's eating all of that lignin, it'll suck up all the nitrogen. Nobody else can grow. Right? And so if no one else can grow, you can kind of imagine, I have a giant silo full of sticks, fungus goes in there, starts to break down the lignin in that, it sequesters the nitrogen, nothing can grow in that unless it's an organism that can eat chitin. So, what enzyme, marina, you think will break down chitin? Chitinase. Okay. See, biology is pretty slick that way. Okay, and so there's a chitinase enzyme, kind of like there's a cellulase enzyme as well. And so you can find an organism or genetically engineer that into your organism and give it the ability to eat the nitrogen. Because otherwise, you can't eat. If there's no other nitrogen source, the stoichiometry won't let you grow. Unless we go anaerobic and start to fix nitrogen and all of that kind of thing. So you want it to be an aerobic chitinase-based system and so forth. So at any rate, that's permissiveness that I mentioned here. Permissive is, make it so only your thing can do its great. And you have to do that through stoichiometry and understanding biological control, not thinking that the whole world is sugar. If all you end up doing is thinking that I have to take my sticks and turn it into sugar, okay, it in theory solves the food-fuel debate. Right? The food-fuel debate is, wait a minute, okay, you're turning all my Krispy Kreme donuts into ethanol for my car. Right? Because that's your choice, right? Here's your corn. Okay. And we can take that and we can make high fructose corn syrup, right? Or we can, and that's what Krispy Kreme does, or we can make ethanol. So that's the food versus fuel debate. It's a little bit lopsided because we're really talking about whether or not we're going to feed it to pigs. Let's not go there. Or cows, right? But nonetheless, that's it. So let's say, for example, that I came up with a really efficient process to turn sticks into glucose. What am I going to do with it? I'll probably make Krispy Kreme donuts. Okay, so I won't have high fructose corn syrup. I will have high fructose last cooking syrup. Okay. If I could turn it into sugar, why wouldn't I actually just stick it in my soft drink or whatever else you want to do with your high fructose corn syrup? And, it just puts it back into the food stream that we could now eat it. So it's like, yeah, well, I couldn't eat it before because it was corn stove or switchgrass or that. But if I had a good process to turn it into it, I'm going to sell it to whoever's going to buy it. for the highest price. It isn't going to suddenly magically be like, oh, like I'm not going to use that for like 50 things on it. It's glucose. Of course you would. Let's see, biological. This is a lot. This is my thought process. I'm just throwing it out there. This is something I've never done. It's just trying to let you think like an engineer. Okay. It's on the farm. How far do I have to drag it? From my field to my place. Where am I going to use it? On the farm. Because I need to run my tractor to do the other stuff that's there. All I need to do is get phase separation. Well, if I can't get phase separation to make either methane or hydrogen, what other phase separation might I be able to easily accomplish on the farm? Way in the back. Phase separation. Two things that are easy to separate. Anything. No, just throw it out there. This is a thought process. Two. What are easy things to separate? Okay, solid and gas. Okay, so if I could turn my fuel into a solid, okay, the problem is that engines don't particularly like rocks. Okay, so can't really feed that in there. But liquids and liquids, right? So how about turn it into an oil? Okay, it would phase separate. Okay, I just need to get. In fact, there's no doubt in my mind that the only process that's going to be commercially viable of going to quote-unquote better fuels like biobutanol and stuff like that is if you can come up with an organism that can produce the product to the point of phase separation. You do not want to distill your product. It takes heat. Distillation is not a great process for energy conservation. Okay, you burn 50%, 40% of the barrel gets burned for the distillation process relative to that. I'd like it to just, I don't know, separate. And so, that is, there are a lot of people that are smart, that they're headed in that direction. And you can get biobutanol, for instance, to phase separate. And if you can, now you've got thermodynamics on your favor. If the phase separates, now it's not in the liquid phase anymore. And you can continue. You don't have feedback repression or any of that kind of stuff. It'll just continue to phase separate and you can actually have a product. So I'm trying to throw this at you because, again, our alumni base, that we had this alumni workshop, all they were talking about is how do these guys understand that you're actually really process engineers? Okay. A process engineer does not go in and think the problem is a kinetics problem or a heat transfer problem or a fluid flow problem. They just know it's a problem. It's a problem that needs to be fixed. And then what you do is you do an assessment of which of my toolbox do I actually put together to make it actually go together. So I wanted, this is sort of a neat exercise where the ultimate goal, of course, is to make money. Okay, we're done. I threw out the division of labor, I think, last time, and I just mentioned about the concept here, is if you could do a hydrocarbon-based conversion, it'll phase separate. What am I going to do with that? I'm going to stick it in my tractor, because my tractor can burn this stuff straight up. I don't even need to refine it. I have a diesel tractor. Okay. Next time we'll talk about fermenting explosive gas mixtures.